Detective Chen? Marcus looked up from his computer to find a woman standing in his office doorway. She was in her early 50s, professionally dressed in a business suit, with carefully styled blonde hair and the kind of posture that suggested years of corporate meetings. But her eyes were haunted. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "My name is Jennifer Hartley," the woman said, sitting down slowly. 28 years ago, my name was Jennifer Price. Katherine Price was my older sister. Marcus felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Katherine, the unsolved case from 1995. Jennifer nodded. "I was 17 when she was taken, 18 when we buried her. I testified back then during the investigation, but I lied. I lied to the FBI agent who interviewed me. I lied to everyone." She reached into her purse with shaking hands and pulled out a worn photograph. She placed it on Marcus's desk. "This is the man who killed my sister. His name is David Garrison. He was her boyfriend, secret boyfriend. My parents didn't approve of him. He was older, had a record, was all wrong for Katherine. So she hid the relationship. And when she disappeared, he told me if I said anything to the police, he'd kill me too. So I stayed silent. I was 17 and terrified, and I stayed silent while that FBI agent, Mercer his name was, I stayed silent while he tore himself apart trying to find answers I had the whole time." Marcus stared at the photograph. A young man, maybe 30 in the photo, with dark hair and cold eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" Marcus asked. "Why not 28 years ago?" "Because David Garrison died last month," Jennifer said, and tears finally spilled down her cheeks. "Car accident. And with him dead, I'm not afraid anymore. But I need you to understand something, Detective. I need you to find Thomas Mercer and tell him I'm sorry, that it wasn't his fault, that he didn't fail. I failed. I let my fear make me a coward, and a brilliant man destroyed his career because of my silence." Marcus's mind was racing. "Where is David Garrison buried? We'll need to exhume the body, run DNA against evidence." "I can give you everything," Jennifer interrupted. "I've kept records. Photographs, letters he sent me over the years, making sure I stayed quiet. I can give you enough to close the case posthumously." She leaned forward. "But please, Detective, before you do anything official, before you make this public, let me talk to Agent Mercer. Let me tell him to his face that he didn't fail, that he was right about everything, that I robbed him of the truth." Marcus sat back in his chair, his mind spinning. Thomas's greatest failure wasn't a failure at all. It was a witness too scared to speak. "Thomas doesn't work here today," Marcus said slowly. "He's at home, but I can take you to him." 20 minutes later, Marcus was driving Jennifer Hartley through Riverside's quiet suburbs, heading toward the small house where Thomas Mercer lived alone. He'd called ahead, but Thomas hadn't answered. That wasn't unusual. The old man often ignored his phone when he was reading or gardening. They pulled into the driveway. Marcus knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again. "Thomas? It's Marcus. I need to talk to you. It's important." Still nothing. Marcus felt a cold spike of worry. He tried the doorknob. Unlocked. "Thomas?" They found him in his study, sitting in his leather chair, surrounded by boxes of files. The Katherine Price case files, spread across his desk, pinned to boards on the wall, covering every surface. And in his hands, a framed photograph of a young woman with a bright smile. Katherine Price. Thomas looked up as they entered. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face hollow. "Marcus," he said hoarsely, "I couldn't sleep last night. I kept thinking, maybe there was something I missed, maybe if I looked one more time." Then he saw Jennifer, and he froze. "Agent Mercer," Jennifer whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And in that moment, as the truth finally came to light after 28 years, Marcus understood something profound. Sometimes the hardest cases to solve aren't the ones with no evidence. They're the ones where the evidence was hidden by fear. Thomas Mercer slowly placed the photograph on his desk. His hands were trembling, His eyes were locked on Jennifer, but unfocused, as if he were seeing a ghost. "Jennifer," he said finally, his voice breaking. "Little Jennifer. You were just a child." "I was 17, Jennifer said through her tears. Old enough to tell the truth. But I was scared. And you were so kind to me. Do you remember? When you interviewed me, you brought me a cup of hot chocolate. You told me my parents only wanted what was best for Katherine. And I lied to your face. I lied straight to your face." Marcus stood quietly in the corner, feeling like he didn't deserve to be part of this private moment. But at the same time, he couldn't leave. This was the moment that had defined the last 28 years of Thomas's life. Thomas stood up but swayed. Marcus moved forward, but Thomas raised his hand. I'm fine, he said, but he wasn't. He stood in the middle of his study, surrounded by the evidence of his own obsession, and looked at Jennifer. "Did he threaten you?" Thomas asked, his voice fragile. Jennifer nodded. "David came to me the night Katherine disappeared. He climbed through my bedroom window. He told me if I mentioned him to you, he'd kill me too. He said there would be another missing person just like Katherine. And I believed him. I was terrified." "You were just a child," Thomas repeated, taking a step forward. "You were a victim." "But you weren't," Jennifer shouted. "You were a perfect FBI agent. I watched you in every investigation meeting. I saw you looking up at the sky. You said you'd find Katherine. And then you didn't. And I watched my mother blame you. I watched my father scream at you. And I said nothing. Because I was selfish and scared. And you paid the price." Tears ran down Thomas's weathered face. Marcus had never seen this man, the legend, his mentor, his unbreakable fortress, cry. It was physically painful to witness. "I tried," Thomas whispered. "God knows I tried. I gave everything I had to that case. It was my last case before I resigned. I couldn't solve it, and it destroyed me." "Good," Jennifer said coldly, then immediately covered her mouth, horrified at her own words. No, I didn't mean..." "It's okay," Thomas said softly. "You have every right to be angry." "No," Jennifer collapsed into the nearest chair. "I don't, because I did this. I'm the reason you failed. I'm the reason Katherine didn't get justice for 28 years. Marcus finally moved forward. "Jennifer, you need to understand something. David Garrison was a predator. He didn't just kill Katherine. He weaponized you. He turned a 17-year-old girl into his accomplice through terror. That's not your fault." "Marcus is right," Thomas said, his voice steadier now. He pulled up a chair and sat across from Jennifer. "I interviewed hundreds of witnesses in my career. And you know what I learned? Fear is the most powerful silencer. David Garrison knew that. He exploited that. You were a child, and he made you a prisoner of your own terror." Jennifer looked up at him, her face ravaged by decades of guilt. "Can you ever forgive me?" Thomas reached out and took her hands in his. "Jennifer, there's nothing to forgive. You were a victim, and I failed to protect you. I failed to make you feel safe enough to tell me the truth. That's on me, not you." "No," Jennifer shook her head violently. "You did everything right. You were kind. You were patient. But David, he was in my head every night for 28 years. Marcus cleared his throat. "Jennifer, you mentioned you have evidence. Letters from David?" Jennifer wiped her eyes and nodded. "Yes, 28 years of letters. His DNA, his fingerprints, his handwriting, all over them. I kept them all because I guess I hoped one day I'd have the courage to use them." "Will you give them to us?" Thomas asked gently. "Yes, and more. I took pictures of the car David used when he took Katherine, before he cleaned it. There might still be blood evidence inside." Thomas's breath caught. "How did you get those pictures?" "Because I was a scared kid," Jennifer said with a bitter laugh. "But I wasn't a stupid kid. David could control me, but I didn't trust him completely. So I gathered evidence to protect myself, but then I was too scared to use it." Thomas squeezed her hands. "We'll use it now, together, and we'll give Katherine the justice she deserves." The next morning, the Riverside Police Academy's conference room had been transformed into a war room. The whiteboard was covered with Katherine Price's photograph, timelines, evidence lists, and at its center, a 28-year-old puzzle. Marcus Chen was leading the briefing, but Thomas Mercer sat quietly in the back of the room. He was a shadow of his former self. His eyes were focused, but Marcus could see the difference. For the first time, Thomas was emotionally invested in a case, and for the first time, that wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. "All right," Marcus told the team. "This isn't a cold case. This is an active homicide investigation. Victim, Katherine Price. Suspect, David Michael Garrison, deceased. But we can still deliver justice." Sarah Kim stood up. "Jennifer Hartley gave us 12 letters, written by David Garrison, dated from 1995 to 2023. All contain implicit threats and demands for silence. Forensics is running DNA and fingerprint analysis now." A young detective named Ryan Foster added, "I pulled David Garrison's traffic accident report. Single vehicle collision, lost control on wet road. But the autopsy report shows elevated blood alcohol, 0.18, twice the legal limit." Thomas spoke quietly. He always drank. When I interviewed him in 1995, his breath smelled of alcohol, but he was never caught because he could control it most of the time. Marcus turned. "Thomas, Jennifer told you David had pictures of the car he used. Can I see them?" Thomas stood and handed Marcus a file folder. Inside was an old Polaroid photograph, a 1990s sports car, dark blue, with bloodstains visible on the back seat. "Is this Katherine's blood?" Marcus asked. "Probably," Thomas said. "But back then we didn't have Katherine's DNA for comparison. Now we do. If we can find this car, we can," Sarah interrupted. "I checked David Garrison's estate inventory. The man was a hoarder, never threw anything away. After his death, his property went to his sister. And his sister rents a storage unit behind her house. Inside, she keeps all of David's old belongings." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. "Let's get a search warrant." Now, 3 hours later, a judge signed the warrant. Marcus, Sarah, Thomas, and a small forensics team drove to a storage facility on the outskirts of town. David Garrison's sister, Linda Garrison Watts, met them at the gate. She was in her 50s, tired looking. "Detective," she said, reading the warrant. "What do you want with my brother?" "He's dead." "We know," Marcus said gently. "But we believe he can help us with a 1995 homicide investigation." Linda's face fell. "Oh God, Katherine Price. I always knew." Thomas stepped forward. "What did you know?" Linda looked at him, then her eyes widened. You're that FBI agent. I saw you on TV years ago. They showed you searching for Katherine." "Yes," Thomas said. "And your brother killed her, didn't he?" Linda began to cry. I couldn't prove it, but yes, I knew. David was always dark, violent. And when Katherine disappeared, I asked him, and he lied to me, but I could see it in his eyes. I could see the truth." "Why didn't you say anything?" Sarah asked. "Because he was family," Linda whispered. "And I'm a coward." Thomas stepped forward and gently touched Linda's shoulder. "No, you were a victim, just like Jennifer. David Garrison weaponized people, but now we can stop him." Linda led them to the storage unit. Inside was dusty furniture, old boxes, and a car, a 1993 blue sports car, exactly like the one in the photograph. The forensics team immediately got to work. Luminol spray, UV lights. On the back seat, even after 28 years, bloodstains glowed bright blue. "Get samples," Marcus ordered. "Everything. DNA, fibers, everything." Thomas approached the car. He touched the back window, as if stroking a ghost. "Katherine," he whispered. Finally, I can give you justice." The DNA results came back 3 days later. Marcus, Sarah, and Thomas sat in the conference room, waiting for forensic technician Dr. Elena Rodriguez to present her report. Elena looked serious. The blood samples from the car match Katherine Price's family DNA at 99.97%. Definitive positive. Additionally, we found hair samples belonging to David Garrison in the front seat, and in the trunk, fiber fragments from the victim's clothing. Marcus leaned forward. "Is this conclusive?" "It'll hold up in court," Elena confirmed. "David Garrison killed Katherine Price, there's no doubt." Thomas leaned back and closed his eyes. 28 years. 28 years he'd waited for this moment. And now it had finally come. But he wasn't happy. He was relieved. Just tired. "Thank you, Elena," Marcus said. "Can you prepare an official report? We'll present it to the DA's office." After Elena left, the three of them sat in silence. Then Sarah spoke. "David Garrison is dead. We can't prosecute him. But we can close the case. We can give Catherine's family closure." "Elizabeth Price," Thomas said slowly. "Catherine's mother. Is she still alive?" Marcus nodded. "I checked. Yes. She's 76, living in a nursing home in Riverside, advanced stage cancer. Doctors are giving her 6 months." Thomas stood up. "I need to go to her, personally. I need to tell her the truth." "Thomas," Marcus said carefully, "she blamed you for years. This won't be easy." "I know," Thomas said, "but I owe her. I made a promise. 28 years late, but I need to keep that promise." Riverside Pine. Nursing home was quiet and peaceful. When Marcus and Thomas entered, the nurse led them to Elizabeth Price's room. She was a small woman, lost in her hospital bed. Her hair was white, her skin paper-thin, but her eyes were still sharp and clear. Thomas stood in the doorway, holding his breath. Marcus touched his shoulder. "You can do this," he whispered. Thomas walked in. Elizabeth turned her head, saw him, and everything froze. "You," she said, her voice raspy but still filled with anger. "You're that FBI agent, the one who failed." Thomas swallowed. "Yes, Mrs. Price, I'm that man, and I came to talk to you about Katherine." Elizabeth let out a bitter laugh. "Katherine, my daughter. You promised me you'd find him, but you didn't." "Wrong," Thomas said softly. "I found him. It just took 28 years." Elizabeth's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" Thomas pulled up a chair and sat down. Then, slowly and carefully, he told her everything. Jennifer's confession, David Garrison, the threats, the car, the DNA evidence. Elizabeth listened, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. When he finished, Elizabeth was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke, her voice broken. "So, you were right all this time, and I blamed you." "You had every right to," Thomas said. "I failed. I couldn't protect Jennifer. I couldn't make her feel safe enough to talk. But now at least I can give Katherine justice and give you closure." Elizabeth reached out and took Thomas's hand. Her hand was cold and frail. "Agent Mercer," she said, "I forgive you, and I'm sorry. My pain targeted you, but you never gave up, did you? Even 28 years later, you were still fighting for my girl." Thomas cried. "Every day, I thought about her every day." "I know," Elizabeth whispered. "I can see it in your eyes. You loved her, a girl you never knew, because that's your job, to care about people." That night when Thomas Mercer returned home, he slept truly for the first time in 28 years. The nightmares didn't come. Catherine's face didn't haunt him. There was only peace. 2 weeks later, the Riverside Police Academy held an official press conference. The police chief, Marcus Chen, and Thomas Mercer sat on the podium. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. The chief approached the microphone. "Today we're here to announce a major breakthrough in the 1995 murder of Katherine Price. Through forensic evidence and new witness testimony, we've confirmed that the suspect was David Michael Garrison. Mr. Garrison died in 2024, so there will be no criminal prosecution. However, this case is now officially closed as solved." A reporter stood up. "Who solved this case after 28 years?" The chief gestured to Thomas. "Retired FBI agent Thomas Mercer, the lead profiler on the original investigation, and currently our Academy's chief consultant." Another reporter. "Agent Mercer, how did this case affect you over 28 years?" Thomas approached the microphone. He hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "It destroyed me," he said honestly. "The Katherine Price case ended my FBI career. It ended my marriage. It ended my confidence in myself, because I failed. But now I know the truth. I didn't fail. The system failed, because we couldn't protect young witnesses. We couldn't make them feel safe." He looked at the cameras. A witness was 17 years old and threatened with death. And I don't blame her. I never will, because she was a child, and we failed to protect her. This is a lesson for every law enforcement officer. Witnesses are our most valuable resource, and if we don't protect them, we'll never find justice. Silence fell. Then, from the back of the room, Jennifer Hartley stood up. Her eyes were filled with tears. "Agent Mercer," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm that witness, and I want to say in front of everyone, you didn't fail. I did, and I'll live with that for the rest of my life. But your forgiveness gave me a second chance to tell the truth and to get justice for my sister." The cameras turned to Jennifer. She continued, "David Garrison controlled me, terrified me, and I chose not to be strong. But Agent Mercer taught me that it's never too late. Truth always finds a way." After the press conference ended, Marcus and Thomas walked outside. The sun was setting, casting golden light over Riverside. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked. Thomas took a deep breath, relieved, but also sad. Elizabeth Price died last night, in her hospital room, peacefully, but at least she died knowing the truth. Marcus nodded. "She forgave you. Her last words were about you. She told the nurse he was a good man." Thomas's eyes filled. 28 years, Marcus. 28 years I saw myself as a failure. And now, finally, I'm free. A month passed. The Riverside Police Academy opened a small memorial garden in Katherine Price's memory. The plaque read, "In memory of Katherine Price, 1971 to 1995. The path to justice may be long, but a forgotten victim is never truly gone. Remember those you've lost along the way." The dedication ceremony brought together Katherine's family, Jennifer Hartley, and all of the Academy's personnel. Thomas gave a speech, his voice strong but emotional. "Katherine Price was more than a name to me," he said. "She was the symbol of my failure. But now, she's the symbol of my purpose. Because Katherine taught me that justice sometimes takes generations. Sometimes it takes years. But it taught me that we must never, ever give up." After the ceremony, Marcus and Sarah sat with Thomas in the garden. "I want to ask you something," Marcus said. "When you resigned from the FBI, did you really think it was over? Or did you know you'd come back someday?" Thomas smiled. "Honestly, I thought I was done. But then you came along. And Sarah, and all these young detectives, and I realized my work wasn't finished. It just evolved. I don't solve cases anymore. I teach people to solve cases." Sarah leaned forward. "And have we taught you anything?" Thomas thought. "Yes, you taught me to forgive myself. For 28 years I made myself a prisoner of that case. But you showed me that I can't change the past, but I can affect the future." Marcus smiled. "It's a two-way street, Thomas. You taught me empathy. You taught me patience. But most importantly, you taught me not to lose our humanity. That while solving cases, we must never forget the victim." As evening fell, the academy emptied. Thomas was the last person there, as usual, but this time not to clean, just to think. He went to Katherine Price's memorial garden. New flowers had been planted, white roses, Katherine's favorites, Jennifer had told him. "Hello, Katherine," Thomas spoke softly. "I know I never talked to you. When you died, I couldn't speak because I'd failed. But now, finally, I can tell you. We found you. We found the truth. And your name is no longer a tragedy. It's a victory." The wind rustled the leaves. Thomas sat on one of the benches and looked at the sky. Stars were beginning to emerge. His phone rang. It was Marcus. "Thomas, where are you? Sarah and I are going to dinner. Want to join us?" Thomas smiled. "Yes, I'm coming." He stood up, looked at the memorial one last time and left. But this time, he wasn't carrying a weight. Because finally, after 28 years, Katherine Price was at peace. And so was Thomas Mercer. 6 months later, Marcus Chen became the new assistant director of the Riverside Police Academy. His first decision was to appoint Thomas Mercer as permanent chief consultant for behavioral analysis and ethics. Thomas's seminars became legendary. But he didn't just teach technical analysis anymore. He also taught empathy, forgiveness, and most importantly, how to learn from failures. At the beginning of every seminar, Thomas would show new detectives Katherine Price's photograph. "This is Katherine," he'd say, "the case I couldn't solve. For 28 years, and I show her to you not to demonstrate how perfect I am, but to show you how human I am, because we will fail, all of us. But failure doesn't define our careers. How we rise from failure defines us. Jennifer Hartley started a foundation in Katherine's memory. Katherine's voice provided support and protection for threatened witnesses. And every year they gave an award to the bravest witness. The first award went to herself. Sarah Kim transferred to the Sexual Crimes Unit. There, she worked with young victims, encouraging them to speak, protecting them. She applied the lessons Thomas had learned from Katherine every single day. And Thomas Mercer? He woke up early every morning, drank his coffee, and went to the academy, because it wasn't a job anymore. It was a purpose. One day, a young detective, fresh graduate, eager, approached Thomas. "Agent Mercer," he said, "can I ask you a question? How did you do this for so long? This work, with all the pain, all the failures?" Thomas smiled. "Because," he said, "every failure is a lesson, and every lesson is a chance to save a victim. Katherine Price taught me the greatest lesson: never give up, never forget, and never, never be afraid to forgive." The young detective nodded. "Thank you, sir." Thomas looked at him, this young, fiery person ready for justice, and saw that the legacy continued. Katherine's legacy, his legacy, and that was enough.